Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Scholar Chit Chat. I'm your host, Joanne, and today I have a co-host with me, Goodness.
Hello, everyone. My name is Goodness Again. Of course, I'm delighted to be part of the host of this special edition of the Scholar Chit Chat new episode. And if you're interested in studying abroad and this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is Scholar Chit Chat podcast, where we are committed to bringing you relevant information that will help you achieve your study abroad dreams. And to our returning listeners, we are glad to have you back. Kudos. And for this episode, it is not just the both of us. We have a special guest. I don't know if you guess, but wait. She will be taking us through writing the winning scholarship and funding essays. Mind you, this is not the regular podcast you've been listening to. So come closer. If you've not ever listened to the Scholarship Chat podcast, I bet you this one you shouldn't miss because it is so raw and practical. So I will just let her introduce herself.
Thank you so much, Goodness, and thank you so much, Joanne, for having me here. So my name is Ojonugwa. If you've been listening to the podcast, this is definitely not your first time hearing from me, but this time around I think I'm sitting the other end of the table. I'm the guest, I'm the person being interviewed. Currently I'm a PhD student at the University of Edinburgh, studying for the One Health models of disease. Before this, I also completed a master's degree on One Health, ecosystems, humans and animals from the Royal Veterinary College and the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. And then before that, I completed a bachelor's degree in microbiology from the University of Edinburgh, Nigeria. So yeah, I think I've constantly stuck to the theme of infectious disease, One Health, basically, and I also have an interest in bioinformatics. So for my degree in microbiology, for final year project, I did the wet lab project. I was in the lab culturing bacteria, doing antimicrobial testing and stuff like that. But those were truly some of the hardest times of my life. I did it. I mean, it wasn't terrible, but I just did not enjoy it. I don't think I have an aptitude for wet lab stuff. And by then, I did like working with microorganisms. Although I initially applied for pharmacy, so microbiology was not my dream from all along. I applied for pharmacy, but I think at the post-UTME I was short of the cutoff for the department by 2 marks. So I was, how it happens. I was reassigned to microbiology. I started with the hope of switching to my dream of pharmacy, but somewhere along the line, I actually even rewrote JAMB while I was still a student, but I just did not go ahead to switch. Somewhere along the line, I just stuck with microbiology. I kind of liked it and I was able to finish with the first class. So that was also something that was great. And then, and as I said, I kind of pivoted from sort of microbiology purely to One Health and bioinformatics. And so now that's what I enjoy doing. I enjoy analyzing the DNA of bacteria, writing a lot of code, data analysis. It's kind of like what I do day to day. But yeah, I'm excited to be here and to share my experiences with everybody. So yeah, over to you guys.
Thank you so much for joining us, Oji. Goodness, the last time we did something like this, we were on the other seat. So today is Oji's turn.
Yes.
That's true, actually.
What seat though?
Okay, so for this episode, I'm very excited because I myself can relate actually to how scary and intimidating writing these essays for funding or scholarship can feel. And I'm so glad. And because later in this episode, Ojo will be reading through one of her statements of purpose. And I believe that by the end of this episode, we'll be able to take one or two things and we'll be able to get clear ideas of how to make essays stand out. What do you think, Goodness?
Of course, I'm also excited for this episode. Well, let me just let the cat out of the bag, all right? Both of us, I and Joanne, actually planned to have you on this seat. I would say that for over time now, you've actually been making us a promise. Okay, we are going to do a practical workshop on how to write an Excel table. has not been done yet. So we decided to push it forward. So now let's move straight into the business. For those who might just be new or perhaps a little confused about the terminology, could you start by clarifying what exactly SOPs?
Yeah, it's true. So yeah, right. Goodness, I've kind of like been talking a lot about making something happen regarding like going into the kind of the details and the nitty-gritties of writing these statements. But I think it's still in the works actually. We'll definitely have to have something more comprehensive. But I think this is a very, very good start. So I'm glad you guys have pushed for this. So for those who probably don't know what it is, if you're applying to graduate school, and actually if you're applying to, let's say you are going to apply for a bachelor's in a lot of Ivy League universities actually. So you start to write statement of purpose, but in Nigeria we don't do that, right? We just write WAEC, NECO, JAM, Potitemi, and then you get into the university. In a lot of developed countries, and I think a lot of kind of prestigious universities, normally if you want to study for even a bachelor's, you have to write a statement of purpose. I think in the UK not all the universities do that, but I think if you want to go to Oxford or Cambridge, you have to write a statement of purpose. But I think for the US, most of the universities, for a bachelor's, you have to write a statement. So this is something that people are like in secondary school SS3, they start thinking about. And it's not too different from what you have to do even when you want to study for a postgraduate degree. So if you want to study for a master's or for a PhD, a lot of times you have to write something. Your application will involve you kind of writing a statement. So can be called different things. It can be a statement of purpose, it can be a motivational letter, it could be a personal statement, whatever the name or the terminology. The main idea is that you are going to sort of be selling yourself. It's like a cover letter. So if you're applying for a job, most times you have to like if you're submitting like your documents via email, or even if you're just like filling a form, a lot of times they would ask you to kind of, why do you want this job, or how are you qualified for this job, whatever. You have to write something about it. So for graduate school or in academia generally, these statements of purpose or personal statements or motivational letter, whatever they are called, are the opportunity for you to sell yourself. A number of times, the program will give you a hint as to what they expect the letter to contain. Generally, it's like the broad understanding that if you're writing a statement of purpose, you're trying to sell yourself. So you're talking about your background, your skills, why you're interested in the program, why you're interested in the school, what you hope to learn. Generally, if there's no other prompt, if they just say submit a statement of purpose, those are the kind of things you write about. But other times as well, the school can say, okay, these are precisely the questions we want you to answer, and then they could itemize like points that they want you to hit. Obviously, like every other thing when you're applying, it's best to stick to the instructions. So even if you want to go overboard, you have to make sure that at the very least you first hit the points that they've asked and hit them very clearly, and then you can then maybe write other things you think may be beneficial, that may sell your case. So it's a very, very, I think it's one of the most important documents. It's very, very central in addition to your other things, your grades and your letters of recommendation. The statement of purpose is like a cornerstone in the application process.
That's actually good. Okay, so now let's just be clear. The statement of purpose should it be focused on your academics, since there's like a personal statement? Would that also be focused on maybe your personal experiences? I don't know, can that count as a difference?
The main idea is to try to look at the application process holistically. So sometimes people, they will say a research statement and then they will say a personal statement. So a lot of times it's usually not statement of purpose and personal statement. It will be like a research statement and a personal statement, and then that's if it's going to be two things. And then essentially they also give you like the tips on what they expect. So if it's a research statement, they're probably expecting you to focus on your academics, and then talk about the skills you have, the kind of research you've done, kind of research you're hoping to do. And then when you're now coming to the personal statement, they're probably asking you to talk more about like your character, your aptitude. So this is when you talk about how you're a good team player, how you have shown resilience, how you've been a leader. All those kind of like very personal traits that make you a very, very qualified candidate. So this is minus your grades, this is minus the research, and we're interested in the research. So if they do split things up like that, they will try to give you like a guide on how to answer the questions. But a lot of times it's just one statement they usually require. I think it's very rare that you don't get any type of prompt on what they're expecting from that statement. you most likely get it. These are the things we're hoping that you would cover. So the aim of the person writing the personal statement is that you cover these things and the points that have been raised, and then you cover them well. So I think that basically, I think paying attention to detail is the most things. And I think there are also some scholarships where you get to write more than one statement. So like for Commonwealth, I know you get to answer, you get a form, like about 10 questions. All together, those things actually form a statement. And the idea from all those questions to kind of get an insight into who you are and your research interest and your skills. So like, just think about it like the whole statement thing you're writing is an opportunity for you to tell yourself, for them to get to know you beyond just like your grades and what your like personal profile, like your location and your date of birth and all those kind of other characteristics. So you get to like speak to them. It's like a pitch if you're trying to win a grant. I mean, for grants, you write as well. If you're trying to win money, if you're trying to get a job, it's the opportunity to pitch yourself and to show that you're the most qualified candidate. One, you are very interested in what you're applying for. Those are the two questions you must answer. One, I'm a perfect fit for this thing I'm applying for. I'm very, very interested in it.
So let's break down this SOP first properly. Like you said, an SOP is an opportunity for you to sell yourself to prove that you are the best candidate. So now, sharing tips for writing a powerful SOP and must-haves for a strong statement or purpose. Can you share some tips on writing a very good SOP, an outstanding SOP?
So yeah, sure, I can. So I think that the very first thing I do, it's been a while I've done it, but like when people come to me and they're like, oh, I want to apply for something, share what they want to apply for, and maybe like I have a chat with the person. One of the first things I try to get people to do is to really reflect on their journey. With every human being, they always say humans respond well to stories. So even though you're saying you're selling yourself, you want to not just be stating points. You don't just want to say, I graduated from this university and then I did this and then I did that and then I did that. You don't just want to list bullet points and your essay and just string statements together that are facts. No, you want to kind of paint a picture. You want it to be like you want to be telling the story of your life. One way to go about it is to put a why. Like, whether you talk about a lesson you learned, so you can talk about a lesson you learned from whatever the experience is, or it could be like, the thing prompted a challenge. So, or if you want to introduce something, it could be like, because of this, like I did this because of this, or because I did this, I learned this, and then it led to this. Like, you want to link your experiences. You don't want to make it seem as though you're just jumping into everything that's available for you. You want to make sure that there is a sort of coherency or a theme in all the activities that you have been participating in. So one of the very good ways to start is actually reflecting about your own life. I would say writing down all the things you've done, all the things you've taken an interest in, academic or not, actually. Because think about yourself as a person, try to understand your person. That's a very good way to write a personal statement, because you have to understand yourself. It's supposed to be very, very personal, and that's the key to the personal. Sit down, reflect who are you as a person. Write those points, highlight them. You can do it in many ways. You can set it as a timeline. All the things you've done over the years. 2001, I did this. 2002, I did this, and everything. That's one thing. So you have that outline of things you've done. Then you want to look for, a lot of times there's usually a word limit or a page limit. And even if there's not specifically, you probably don't want to write anything more than 2 pages, because nobody has time to read 2 long things. If I can keep it to 1 page and still have it very powerful, the better. Or if for whatever reason you've lived a very interesting life and you think people will really like to hear everything about your life, and everything you're going to write is going to contribute to making you an ideal choice, go ahead. But I think I would strongly suggest not to write more than 2 pages if there's no explicit kind of cut off thing. So when you do that, I think a very good place to, so as I've said, first thing is that reflection, putting out an outline / timeline, whatever. And you have to look about this, then have a look at all the things you've kind of written out, and then think about what fits best to what you're applying for. What are the experiences that will show your interest the most, that will show your skill the most, and select those as well. And then so again, because you're writing down everything you've done, a lot of things probably not apply to that opportunity. So for instance, myself, like I could apply for instance, not even I did apply for different kinds of projects when I was applying to graduate school, because of obviously I was not just applying to one type of thing. Basically, I was very interested in working on infectious diseases, but sometimes I see some things I'm like, oh yeah, I mean, I won't terribly mind applying to maybe something regarding cancer. Like, I think I did one application like that, and for me it was for me to sit down and be like, okay, I haven't worked on cancer. How do I sell the idea that I will be a good candidate for them? So obviously the experiences I will highlight for that statement of purpose will be different from the one I highlight for infectious disease. Or maybe it's not that the experiences will be different, but the reasons or the stories I tell around them will be different. So essentially, it's why very good to kind of keep, first of all, those experiences or those key points that you could always use to tell your story. It's very good to have a note of them. And then when you want to start writing the statement, you start thinking about how you frame them to have a very, very beautiful story that will be coherent, that will make sense, and that will show you in the best possible light. So I think I will just stop there. But I think those are the things that's kind of like how to get started.
I'd like to ask this question from OJ. OJ, please, can you read like a paragraph in any of your essays that highlight where you stated one of the probably your work role you've done before and how you linked it to the why? We want to know exactly how it is being done. So, okay, I did this because of this, like what you said. Can you just read like a paragraph for us? Let's see how to link it or how you link what you've done to the.
So for instance, this is kind of like one of the more recent statement of purposes I have written over the years. And so for instance, for this statement of purpose, the prompt was to write about your interests in infectious disease research, including what motivates the interest in the subject, how your educational research and life experiences have informed your choice of career, and how your skill set has equipped you to undertake a PhD, and what attributes you will bring to the program. So like these are the things they wanted the statement of purpose to hit. So for instance, one of the paragraphs here, I'm talking about, I guess, just talking about like generally my interest. I think I was trying to answer the first question, why I'm interested in infectious disease research. And so this is not the first paragraph in the essay, but this paragraph is trying to, as I said, answer my interest in infectious disease research. And I say, again, there's also a very limited word count. So anyway, I say, as a young child in Nigeria, a low and middle income country in sub-Saharan Africa, I have suffered from repeated episodes of malaria. It is reported that on average, 50% of adults in Nigeria have one malaria episode annually. My desire to understand the causes of infectious diseases, as well as how to combat them, prompted me to pursue a bachelor's in microbiology. Learning about the potential hazards of antimicrobial resistance, I conducted research into the antimicrobial susceptibility profile of gram-negative bacteria isolated from a meat source in Nigeria for my final thesis. During this research project, I became aware of several next-generation sequencing technologies and their massive impact on the study of infectious diseases. However, these state-of-the-art technologies were not available to me due to insufficient funding. So essentially what I've tried to do here is, I guess, link my background, which is, I grew up in Nigeria. So it's kind of personal notes, and I'm telling them that there's a personal note. I grew up in Nigeria and I've had experiences of malaria, which is an infectious disease, a big one. It's one of the big three in the infectious disease world. And then I put some data to it as well. 50% of adults in Nigeria have at least one malaria episode annually, probably it's even more than that, but again it's average. And then I talk about how I just had this interest, and then I studied the bachelor's in microbiology. To be honest, when I was writing about how I came to microbiology, it depends. To be honest, I can write about it and I can put different kind of reasons to, but I've told you guys everything. I actually did not apply for a microbiology degree, but now I just there's a lot of, so it depends on what I'm applying for. I say statements, and that's what prompted me to pursue a bachelor's in microbiology. And then I talk about, and then instead of just introducing my final year projects in the university. I talk about, I learned about antimicrobial resistance, and then I conducted a research project on that. It depends on the program I'm applying to. Sometimes I can really like emphasize this, I can highlight this in different ways, but I don't just say, I studied. So again, I could simply have just said I studied microbiology and I did my project was this. All these lines, that's essentially what I have said. But I didn't just say those statements. I put some why, I put some thing, and then I'm leading somewhere with my next statement. My next statement is saying I became aware of next generation sequencing and how they're very important for infectious diseases, and how these things were not available to me then. So that's the end of this paragraph. But again, it's a good kind of ending for this paragraph, because in the next paragraph I got to talk about what I then did and how kind of like I built my skills to get me ready for PhD. So that's just one paragraph. But again, I hope it highlighted what I was talking about regarding like not just stating the fact, not just stating bullet points, but trying to tell a story. So I think that when I was reading it, hopefully you kind of could imagine the person that is speaking and see that their interest in infectious disease just goes beyond the university offered me microbiology and I applied for pharmacy. I could have written that, I did not. I told them I do have an interest in disease and how it's affecting people and how it has also affected me in the past. And obviously, I'm also very interested in how my field is advancing in tackling infectious diseases. So that's just one paragraph.
Thank you very much, Oji. Yeah, so the next question is on the motivational letter. This is mostly for scholarships, like maybe government scholarship, where they ask to talk about why this school, why this country, why this course. This is mainly just about the whys. Yeah. So can you please just share tips for writing a winning motivational letter? For instance, someone that wants to apply for the Brazil government scholarship. I know for the MEC scholarship, the Japan one, they'll ask you what triggered you to study in Japan. What will you add to the country? What will you take back to your own country also? So basically, that's for the motivational letter. So just share tips for writing that with us.
Yeah, you're right. So with the motivational letter, the questions you've raised or the points you've raised are valid ones. Let me try to find like the Commonwealth one. The questions you've asked are the kind of thing they will ask you in the Commonwealth. So let me see what I wrote for Commonwealth. So I can kind of use that as an example. Actually, yeah. So for instance, if it's in terms of like why are you interested? So for instance, this is a paragraph I have written. So for me, I think I'm trying to answer the question. So I think the question is why I chose a particular course at a particular university in particular. The answer I give is, as someone who aspires to be a health researcher, I am looking out for a world-class program with a clearly demonstrated emphasis on multidisciplinary research. This is because I believe that to successfully combat infectious diseases, collaboration of various disciplines, including health science, economics, anthropology, etc., using the best technologies currently available is necessary. This PhD program at this ticks this box for me. Several other studies conducted at the university, like the current research with the Fleming Fund on developing AMR awareness and surveillance capacity in LMIC, align with my future interests. So I believe this program will be best training ground for me. Furthermore, this program structure incorporates lab. So essentially, so I can give you like sort of the backdrop for this. So again, I'm trying to sell why I think the program and invest is best for me. You can only do this by going to read about the program and the university, and that's what I've highlighted in this particular paragraph. So essentially, I highlighted the uniqueness of the program, and I think when they read it, they'll be impressed to know that I'm not just applying to university because it's the university like that. It's like you've actually gone to look at the things that we do different, and usually like most of these things, the universities usually highlight them on their websites. They brag about them. So if you go and read maybe like the particular department you're interested in, they will kind of highlight what they think is their unique selling point, like what distinguishes them from others. Like I could study like health in anywhere, but like university knows that there's something about them that is special, and they always, as I said, they'll always highlight it. One other thing I did is I included like some of the current research they were doing, and I'm like, you guys are doing things that are things I can see myself doing in the future. And I just like highlighted the peculiarities of the program itself as well. So I said, okay, your program is different from other kinds of program because of this. So that's the only way you can answer this question. Initially, when I started, the very kind of basic way is also to talk about like the researchers. You can say, oh, you guys have world-class technology, state-of-the-art facility, and leading experts. That's very generic. You can actually say that, but I think it's also very generic. Like you can apply to any university. A lot of world-class university, you can just say that, oh, you have outstanding facilities, you have leading experts, and I'll be very delighted to work with them. Or sometimes people talk about the fact that, oh, maybe there's somebody specifically, that's another angle to go. So there's somebody specifically, like you can mention a professor's name and the research they do, and it's like, oh, because I know, like, I'm very interested in this field particularly, and I know that you have this professor who is the leading expert. Maybe the person has set up this technique or whatever, or this framework, and I'm very kind of delighted to work with this person. So like there are a lot of angles you can use if you're trying to sell wider university, wider program, but I think it's better for you to make it very specific rather than to use generic language. If you kind of as specific as possible, again, you don't have to, it's not magic. All you have to do is go to the school's website, look at the things they're bragging about, go to the department website, what is the thing they're bragging about, and just repeat it to them. They'll like to hear, okay, at least you checked and you know that this is what we are good at. Then I think that was the second point you asked.
Yeah, why the country? What triggered you?
Country, I think, maybe in Commonwealth. I think they asked that one. What did I say? So for instance, why you want to undertake the study in the UK? I said essentially the UK government has one of the best healthcare systems in the world, which makes it an excellent place for health research. I think that's essentially the only line I wrote about them.
Okay.
Because again, I think I can't remember. Yeah, okay, 300 words, but there were a lot of questions to kind of tackle. I think in other parts of my essay, I probably talked about how they have a rich cultural history, blah blah blah. I can't exactly find the question, but I think there was another question about like how I plan to kind of maximize my stay in the UK or something. And I talked about like how I would like to, So I look forward to mingling with my colleagues on a multi-ethnic and multinational level. And I anticipate collaborations that will benefit from the input of various cultures and worldviews. I'm enthusiastic about learning more about the British people and culture whose language I have spoken all my life. So again, it's kind of knowing about the country. So in Brazil, for instance, because you've mentioned the country Brazil, I don't really know anything about Brazil, but obviously what I would be kind of looking like, I know Brazil is like South American. I think they're probably like maybe close to the Amazon. It may not just only be academic, right? It may just be fascinated, like, it has a rich geography, or they're kind of popular for something. I think Brazilian cuisine is quite close. In Brazil, there's some Yoruba people as well, so they share maybe some cultural similarities to West Africa. So again, whatever you're going to write, just make sure that it's as specific as possible. It doesn't always have to be academically, like it doesn't only have to always be like academic. Sometimes you can, especially when they're asking you about like a country, you can also like talk about their culture, like, I'm kind of interested in your culture as well. But in addition to your culture, you guys have excellent facilities, you guys do excellent research, so I think it would be a good idea. I'm very interested in studying your country. So stuff like that is kind of how you frame that.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Ruji, for that explicit explanation you've just given. So now let's move to conclude that part of, can you give us some writing tips on how to go about the personal statement?
So I would say, I've talked about like having the timeline and this kind of outline sort of thing, and then putting your whys, and your whys, a lot of whys together, either a kind of prompting to the event or a lesson from the event. If you have those two things, if you have something that happened, like you want to know why did you do it, and then what did you learn from it. Sometimes maybe how, like if you had a scholarship, you can put all those things in as well to enrich the whole story and make it flow. But then one of the other things is you want to start writing your essays on time. Don't keep it to the last minute. Anybody that like writes often, you know that a lot of times writing doesn't necessarily go the way you think in your mind. Writing is a very good, and I think there's kind of like probably a saying that writing is thinking. Like if you don't write, you're probably not thinking well, because writing is how you kind of put a structure to your thinking, to your thoughts. Start writing, write early, don't write close to the deadline. Send your personal statements out for review. I think that's very key. A lot of people neglect to do that. But send it out to more than one person actually. Get multiple opinions on how your statement reads. Sometimes you'll be embarrassed. I remember when I first started out, I'll be like, oh my god, like kind of embarrassed about writing. What if I've written nonsense? It doesn't really matter, to be honest. Like, your shame will not bring anything to you. You want to improve, and the best way to improve is to send it out to people. Send it out early so that they can give you like a honest feedback and help you improve your essay. Again, you don't have to necessarily implement every kind of feedback you get. People have different writing styles. You want to make sure that you maintain your language or your style when you write. So some people may just say, oh, you didn't write it well. I think you don't necessarily have to like take feedback about like your style. But if people say, oh, I don't think you answered this question well, or like I can't see the answer to this point that they've raised in the prompt, then you want to take note of that. So if somebody reads your essay, and always send your essays with like all the instruction, all the questions, or the word count. So if someone reads and they're like, okay, they asked this question, like I cannot see the answer. So even if you thought you'd answered it, you want to make sure you go back in and kind of really like expand, like really make it very, very obvious that you've clarified the point that the prompt raised. Stick to word count. I think that's kind of obvious. Again, there should not be grammatical errors, especially now. Like, I think it will be unforgivable if there's grammatical errors or spelling errors in your statement of purpose, because we have like AI now, right? We've always had them actually. We've had like Grammarly and Quillbot, like even before like ChatGPT came about. But now we have ChatGPT. Like, obviously I would say don't use generative AI to write it. Don't give it a prompt and tell it to write a personal statement for you. It's going to be that's probably going to be the worst. That's about the worst thing you can do to yourself, to ask ChatGPT to write a personal statement for you, because it's going to give something very generic and average. If people read it, they know there's no personality in it. Remember that the personal statement is going to be as personal as possible. Like, there are going to be many people applying to the same thing, but everybody's going to write it differently, and the personality of each individual is going to show in their statement. So, but if an AI writes something for you, it's probably it's going to be quite bland, to be honest. All the kind of different reasons you have for doing things, I don't think that the AI can give that. However, you can obviously use it to proofread your essays, but again, you don't want it again to take away your reading style. So don't necessarily tell it to paraphrase, or let's say your reading style, your writing style. So you don't necessarily, probably not best tell it to paraphrase, because again, there is a structure to how like generative AI writes that a lot of people are getting used to. So people are able to spot, oh, an AI wrote this and AI wrote that. You don't want, say you've written in your own words with your own style, and then you give it to it and then it paraphrases it, and then maybe your story is still in there, doesn't take it out, but it still reads as though AI wrote it. It probably will not get you good points. I feel like we're probably coming to a stage where maybe it will not mean as much, like having AI write stuff for you will not mean as much as it means now. It's possible, but until then, I would say just use AI cautiously. Yeah, but I think those are kind of like the main things I would say people should take note of. I think another things as well, like research your field. That is very important. Like, although it's a personal statement and you're talking about yourself, you also want to show that you are conversant with the research in your area. That's something you can show. Or even not just the research in your area, about like what is ground truths in your area. So for instance, like quoting like some statistics usually helps sometimes. So which I try to at least have one statement that quotes some kind of statistics. Or 50% of adults in Nigeria have this, according to WHO. I normally kind of have statements like this that just show that, okay, I'm conversant with what is like the general knowledge. And then you can also talk about how you're conversant with what is the problem. So sometimes you may be applying to a specific project, mostly for PhDs actually, less so for masters. But like for a PhD, a lot of times you're applying to a project. So they've told you this is what you're applying to. So obviously you want to show that you have some at least background knowledge on that problem. You want to show it in one paragraph of your write-up at the very least. You also want to highlight your skills as much as possible. Like if you're applying to a course or whatever, say, okay, I've done this, and this will help me. I've done your project, maybe like your bachelor's project, some other extracurricular things you've done, some of the kind of skills you picked up from all those things. You want to kind of highlight them in the essay. So yeah, I think those are some of like the things that would help writing the statement.
Okay, so now we are moving to the most exciting segment of this episode, which is reading OJ's SOP. So before you start reading, could you give us a little context about this particular SOP you'll be reading? What scholarship is it for, or what program was it for?
Yes, essentially, to talk about my interest in infectious disease research, what motivates my interest in the subject, how my educational research and life experiences have informed my choice of career, and how my skill sets have equipped me to take a PhD, and what attributes I'll bring to the program. So I'm to say that in no more than 500 words. So that's like the first prompt. And so, if I would say, although it's like I'm reading this because it's one of the more recent statement of purposes I have written. I have a lot. I guess my statement of purpose have improved over time. How I kind of write them have changed over time, and I've written obviously several kinds of statement of purpose. And as I say, a lot of times the prompts they give you are different. So what I do is make sure I stick to the prompt. So for this, the program is called Host Pathogens and Global Health. I always like to start with like an introduction. When I start writing my SOPs initially, I always start by introducing myself. I have a master's, I have a bachelor's actually. Some of my earlier ones usually used to start with kind of I graduated from university, and kind of just talking about myself and my grades. But over time I don't necessarily introduce myself at the very beginning. I talk about the problem at the start, and then I start talking about myself later, kind of like weaving a story about who I am. Instead of just stating I have a bachelor's in this, I rarely ever do that now. I start I introduce the problem and then put myself into the picture along with the problem. Anyway, let me just read this. Parasitism is one of the fundamental associations that occur between organisms on Earth. While there have been notable improvements in our knowledge of host pathogen coevolution over the years, there is still a significant knowledge gap. Furthermore, there is an uneven decline in infectious diseases across regions in the world. According to the WHO, 6 of the top 10 causes of death in low-income countries in 2019 were communicable. I think I wrote this in maybe 2020 or 2021. However, as seen from the COVID-19 pandemic, the existence of an infectious disease in one corner of the world is a threat to the health of the whole world. This is further exacerbated by changes caused by climate change, which allows for the presence of vectors and reservoirs in areas where they were previously not found. So that's like my introduction into. Then I go into now talk about myself. As a young child in Nigeria and LMIC in sub-Saharan Africa, I suffer from repeated episodes of malaria. It is reported that on average, 50% of adults in Nigeria have one malaria episode annually. My desire to understand the causes of infectious diseases as well as how to combat them prompted me to pursue a bachelor's in microbiology. Learning about the potential hazards of antimicrobial resistance, I conducted research into the antimicrobial susceptibility profile of gram-negative bacteria isolated from a meat source in Nigeria for my final thesis. During this research project, I became aware of several next-generation sequencing technology and their massive impact on the study of infectious diseases. However, these state-of-the-art technologies were not available to me due to insufficient funding. I began to apply for scholarships for graduate study in leading universities in developed countries, where I would have access to leading experts and current technology. During the wait for graduate school admission, I enrolled in several MOOCs where I learned the analysis of sequencing data to obtain biological insights. I'm currently an MS student in One Health at the Royal Veterinary College as a Commonwealth Shared Scholar. As a One Health graduate student, I have studied the drivers of pathogen emergence, the use of systems thinking to develop effective interventions, as well as the social, economic, and political factors involved in making health decisions. For my MS thesis, I plan to research antimicrobial usage and determinants of antimicrobial resistance in Salmonella typhi by combining data on antimicrobial usage in man and animals across various countries. My technical knowledge, research skills, and multidisciplinary approach to problem solving made me an excellent fit for this program. Furthermore, my status as a Commonwealth Shared Scholar after 2 years of applying affirms my excellent communication skills, resilience, and ability to improve, skills that I'm confident will serve me well in the PhD program. Finally, as a citizen of an LMIC, I bring a unique perspective and drive, as I have experienced firsthand the devastating effects of infectious diseases, and I'm dedicated to ensuring the procurement of predictive solutions to infectious diseases that plague such countries, to prevent their reemergence to new geographic regions, as well as to even out the existing health disparity. Those are my 500 words to that particular question. So obviously that was not all for the application, but I think that was the main part of like statement of purpose, because it also asks about why I chose the program at the university and how my interests and career aspirations fit with the program's multidisciplinary and collaborative approach to infectious disease research. And yeah, that was 200 words, so I did write. I think I've read most of that particular paragraph previously. It's about answering the question. So I hope that when I read that paragraph, you're able to see what motivated my interest in the subject. I talked about my previous education, my research, and some of my life experiences, how they have informed that choice, some of the skill set I had, and what attributes I hoped to bring to the program. So those are the questions I asked in not more than, and I was to answer that in not more than 500 words. And I hope that as I was reading it, you're able to hear answers to those points.
Thank you so much for reading one of your SOP for us, right? Not everyone will actually be willing to do this on a live show, because it is a live show. So it was an amazing one, and I really love the idea of you starting with the problem instead of more like starting with yourself. Looks kind of a little bit generic, and it's like a little innovation, which I'm telling everyone you're listening to, pick that as more like as a tip on writing your own SOP. So then let's move on to the questioning aspect. How many drafts did it take you to get this exact version of the SOP you read to us? And what was your revision process like?
How many drafts? I think that's a question I cannot necessarily answer, because you become better the more you do stuff. Alright, so it's not like the first SOP I have written. Over time, obviously, I've gotten more better, again, more proficient at writing, because again, it's just 500 words. To be honest, I probably could have written more than 1,000 words on this particular SOP. But I would say when you are starting out, give yourself time. Allow yourself to be able to write multiple drafts. I have several copies of SOPs, such that sometimes I even just copy and paste. Later stages, I just copying, because I've applied to different kinds of programs, different types of, so I'll be this, so now maybe I'm applying to infection biology, blah blah blah. I'm okay, I can take part of the one I applied to AMR, I'll use the introduction of that one. Okay, the other one I applied for to some other program, I'll use the second paragraph. I mix them. I'll mix up. I'll be okay, I can take one paragraph from my Commonwealth essay. And so at that point, I was reaping the benefits of having multiple past versions of SOPs. But I'll say initially, when you're starting, to be honest, allow yourself to be able to write maybe at least 3 iterations of a particular SOP. Again, because you have to, I guess it depends on is it the draft, because again, there's you have written multiple drafts yourself, and then you send them out for review, and then you include the reviewers feedback that you get into it. So to be honest, if you're keeping track, I don't even know for a very good SOP, especially when you're starting out, you work on it a lot of times, which is why I'm start it early. Your SOPs normally should be ready at least 2 weeks before deadline. That's a minimum, because you're sending it out by that 2 weeks before the deadline. That's when you send it out. Hopefully the people there that are applying, you tell them, it will soon be due. They're able to send it back to you, and then you probably have the last week to actually put the final touches. So that's the ideal situation. You have to have written it. I remember for my Commonwealth essay, even though there were 10 essays, what I did, I think that was the first major application I wrote, because I think I'd applied to schools before then, and for schools I was just writing, I think it's 500 words maybe, so not a lot. But the Commonwealth one, because you're writing 10 essays, you have to write a lot of words. I remember actually finished writing my Commonwealth essay on one sitting. I sat down once and wrote it, but before I sat down, I just had the questions. It's a very, very unique approach. I had the questions open. I had the questions on the document, or the questions, and then I would just either sit down or lie down and just be thinking about the questions. I did that for maybe a week. I would have time, so I kind of had mentally written those things. I knew what kind of, maybe if I wanted facts, I knew what kind of facts I wanted to put. I knew. So for every question I had that. So I just sat, I want to say it was one day, it was maybe for the morning till night. I was writing I would write maybe for an hour, take a break, sit down, write. So I knew that I was today I'm finishing this essay. And that was after a week of deep thought and strategizing in my mind. Also, I had a template. That time I was applying, there was this folder. So past Commonwealth scholars had put their Commonwealth essays in a folder. I don't know if I still have access to that thing, but for whatever reason, from one of the many groups I was on, I found one of those samples, somebody that won. So there was one particular template I liked. The person was not even in health. I remember the guy who had the scholarship in transport something. That was what the essays were about. But I opened his essay, I put it side by side. I was like, you get the idea, like the guy's approach to answering the questions was exactly what I copied. Like up to now, I don't know who the guy is. I'm very, very grateful for that, because I started thinking, because again, I was using his own essays to think, because I was looking at how he had written his answers, and like, if I'm going to write it for health, what kind of things will I write that is kind of comparable to the things he wrote? Like, I really liked the way he answered his stuff, and I think I knew he won the scholarship. So I was like, okay, how do I apply this to my field? Completely different fields. I was like, what is he trying to convey with this sentence? How do I convey the same thing? So that was the pattern I used as well. So that's kind of what helps me in my stuff, which is why I didn't just sit and start writing. I looked at the questions, looked at how the guy answered it. How do I answer? So once I've done that mental kind of, okay, I know what kind of sentence, what will convey this thing that this guy did. I sat down, put his own essay in front of me, opened my own, and started constructing the essays kind of like in the same fashion as his own. And I mean, here I am. So something worked. So yeah, so again, there are like different approaches, but you want to give yourself time, essentially. And I tell people, when I wrote that essay, I sent it to like a group of like 10 PhD students at the time. They were all like people who had gotten scholarships. They were all studying outside the country in different countries. It was like an organization I was a part of. I was volunteering for at that time. Mm-hmm. They were like 10. They left me statements. Like 10 of them reviewed the essay at once, because like I submitted it to the organization. When I received the feedback, I had so they put it was a Google link I sent to them. So they put comments on the Google document. It was like, I opened it, it was like maybe 300 comments, and they had made corrections. Like it was like a thesis or something. And I started going through it. But the good thing was that they did leave they left like a general feedback, and the feedback was like, your essay is really good. So I was also happy. I was like, okay, because they said, your essay stands a winning, it looks excellent. You have a winning chance. Like that was their feedback. So even though when I opened it, I was like, oh my God, what's this? They left a lot of comments and a lot of feedback for me. But I was quite encouraged to see that their overall kind of summaries that I had written something that was really nice and could stand a chance of winning. And I eventually did win the scholarship. So again, I got a lot of feedback. Like I sat down and I was looking at all the comments and changing things as they said and taking all their suggestions and stuff like that. So again, you have to be open. It's quite difficult to have people critique your work, especially when you put in a lot of effort into it. Sometimes you wonder which is why you have to give reviewers that you respect, so that when they are critiquing your work, you are not offended. Otherwise, you can easily be offended because why would this person be telling me this? But exactly. But I knew these guys. I trusted that they had some authority to be able to give me constructive feedback. And they were also nice. Obviously, not all reviewers are nice. Some people can be mean, but I think a lot of times people are usually nice. So I like that they first told me, it's good, you've written well, won't say scrap anything or whatever, but we can give you pointers on how to rearrange stuff, summarize stuff, and all those kind of things. But yeah, it takes some kind of vulnerability to be able to reach out to people and tell them to review stuff for you. It is difficult. But again, I've talked about the process a lot, but give yourself time to write. And if you're starting out, it's more difficult. For me now, to be honest, if you tell me to write, it's because again, obviously, the higher you go, the more complicated stuff you're writing, right? So if I want to apply for something now, it's still difficult. SOPs are nothing anymore. If I truly, when I was applying for my pages as well, I was like, SOPs are nothing, because I'd written coursework, which on that thing I tell people, if you can't write an SOP, you're not going to survive your masters. You're writing more complicated stuff for your masters, you're going to have to do research and do critical thinking. This one, they tell you to write about your life. It cannot be hard. You cannot be struggling. That should be the list of your problems. Because when you go to school, you're going to be writing about things you are learning, things you've never heard anything about. You're going to write more than 500 words. You're going to be writing a lot of words. So by the time I was applying for my PhD, I was like, what is this? 500 words. I should write about myself in 500 words. I would just wake up from my sleep and write it in. Or I would copy and paste something. I wasn't really, this were not the hard parts of the application. The personal statement was nothing. And I think now as well, I'm writing personal statement about myself. It's really nothing. There's too much things I could write about, right? And I know a lot of times, if I don't get into something, and I think that's where it's different for me now. If I don't get into something, I don't think that I am particularly a failure. I understand how life is now. Competition is tough. Places are limited. Money is not enough. It doesn't mean I'm not good. I do believe that at least I have been able to prove myself to a sufficient level that, okay, I'm really quite good. If I don't get into something, there's probably somebody better than me, which is not bad. Because for an opportunity, somebody may be better suited that meets a particular opportunity. It doesn't mean that my own is not out there. I don't feel bad, but again, I know like the statement of purpose is I cannot write a bad statement of purpose anymore, right? So yeah, I've kind of deviated from the top, but these are kind of like I've talked about like essentially things you should have at the back of your mind. They just know that you get better with time. When you're starting out, give yourself time to think, give yourself time to write and rewrite, get feedback and write again. If you're starting, just be patient. This is the thing, you will get good at it, but you want to be patient and do this. I've written more than 100 SOPs because at this point, so that's the point. Like once you've done this multiple times, it becomes nothing. But when you're starting out, don't think that you are going to sit down and write the perfect SOP. It's not going to happen. Even if you're a writer, you've published a book, it's a different writing style, so you're not going to get it perfect at the start. Give yourself that grace to reduce, take feedback and improve. That's just it.
All right, it's a whole lot of package. So not to bore our listeners, at the same time not to stress you and stretch you out, I will just make things very rapid and at the same way straightforward. I just have two things. Really to the flow of my other co-host. So OJ, from all what you've said, which I understood, that every SOP have a stipulated theme. Let me just put it that way, like a stipulated goal. So, and what you said, it seems you have a formula on how you approach each of the SOP. So, just in a nutshell, I want you to give us a formula. It should be OJ's formula on writing an SOP. So, for your introduction, what and what should be there? The body, what and what should be there? For instance, let me just give you like a sketch. For instance, if you want to write an essay, an English essay, right? A normal essay. So your introduction, you should start with probably a definition, method, blah, blah, blah. Then add a supporting sentence. And at the ending of your introduction, ensure you state the points you want to explore, further developing the body. Then in the body, you start with the topic sentence, supporting sentence, and probably examples. So from what you said concerning your SOP, you made mention of giving a quota, like a percentage, stating the reasons, stating why and everything. So I want you to give us the OJ's formula in a nutshell. Like, okay, your introduction, this. You should look out for it, or it should be included in the body. Add this, ensure you add this, ensure you add this.
I get the spirit behind your question. I guess people could give you formulas. I guess it's possible. But to be honest, I don't think I have a formula. And I don't think there's necessarily a formula that would work in terms of like the introduction should have this and this and this and the next should have this and this and this and this. I don't think there necessarily is one. Me, I would say some people at the very least, like if you don't have like a guide, because again, as I say, a lot of times you do get very strict guides which restrict your kind of creativity and stuff. If you don't necessarily have too much restrictions, I talked about like how many pages you want to have. Yeah, I think it's hard because I don't think about, when I'm writing a statement, but I don't think about like a formula in terms of like how to actually structure, like in terms of like, maybe I think you are coming from like the English perspective, which is good. You're talking about like the components of the paragraph and stuff like that. I don't necessarily think about my statements in that way. I think about them in the way I've kind of explained previously, like, okay, I have my experiences here, I have my skills here, my education here. I'm going to try to tell the story. Even the introduction, it can start in different ways. Sometimes I can start now. I don't usually start myself now, but previously I used to start with myself, and I don't think there's anything wrong with if you want to start like introducing yourself in story form. That's still okay. But generally for me, in the introduction, I tend to like talk about the research, like the research area generally, like give a broad overview, like, okay, I understand whatever the topic is, some like statistics to it, like some statistics to the problem, like just show that I understand what's happening generally on the research topic. I then go on to kind of start introducing myself and my education, and so the second paragraph I start maybe talking about myself, my education, my projects I've done previously, and how they relate to kind of like how my interest has kind of grown or been inspired by the things I've gone through. Probably second and third paragraph, I probably talk about those two things. I'm trying to like develop like who I am and why I'm interested in the issue. So I tie most times second and third paragraph, these are the things I majorly try to answer. This is who I am, these are the skills I have, these are the things I've done, this is why I'm interested in this program. I try to answer those questions with those two paragraphs. And like in the fourth, going down and I'm answering things like, what are the skills I hope to develop, who I hope to work with. So depending on like what the prompt is, maybe they say mention a professor you like to work with, or mention a topic you want to work on, or what skills would you like to learn, what is your, those kind of, why did you choose this school. Those fourth paragraph is kind of like where I try to answer that. And then I think generally I probably have like a fifth paragraph, and that's talking about future aspirations type of things. And then I most times usually end, I know I have like maybe like somewhere like a set formula of how I end this thing. Most times I try to end about like wrap it up with something like, oh, this is where like I'm a good fit for the program. Sometimes it's usually like very close to one of the last things I say, like my this are one of the things that make me a good fit for the program, or make the program an ideal program for me. Like this is why this program is an ideal program for me, kind of thing. Like I try to like wrap it up, or I talk about my aspirations. So again, the last paragraph just my aspirations, and also highlight and kind of like summing it up, like all these are the reasons why I'm a good fit, or the program is a good fit for me, or whatever. So essentially I think about like my paragraphs in terms of these are the questions I want to answer, these are the points I want to hit, and then I go about like doing that. And then I think about, oh, these are all the experiences I want to highlight, and how do I tie them up, how do I like connect the experiences one to the other, and what's the main point I'm trying to drive. Like when you read these two sentences together, what's the point I want you to get? And I try to make sure that the person gets the point. So if it's like I'm trying to highlight my interest in infectious disease, for instance, that might put a couple of sentences together. It's like, have I answered this question? So I think about my paragraphs on the essay journaling. When I want to start an essay, I'm like, I look at the points, I have the questions, I'm like, I must answer these questions. Then I structure my write-up that way, and I try to make sure that it's a story that flows so that it's interesting to read it. So that's kind of like a formula in quotes that I kind of have at the back of my mind.
Okay, thank you so much, Joanne.
Okay, I must say, like I got a lot of inspiration from your essay and a lot of take homes, and I'm very sure our listeners also got one or two from what you've said. Yeah, so I'll just want to ask this question. For someone that is just starting, this is the first time they want to pick their pen and paper or their notebook to start writing any essay for scholarship or funding. What's one advice you give to that person? Because most times it's your story, you want to say your story, but then sometimes you are scared, so it won't come out like you are bragging or you are modest enough and you are not selling yourself well. So what advice will you give to someone in such a situation?
Yeah, I would say don't be scared to brag. To be honest, like they're just starting out. I think one thing I like to tell people when they're just starting out and they don't really know where to start is that you probably have a lot more to brag about than you think. Because I think that a lot of times people think I don't have a lot of experience. I don't have a lot. I'm not sure that I would meet up to the requirements. But I thought there's a very good chance that you probably have done more than you like enough, and you just have to be able to like frame them well, I guess. Package them well, or kind of make your, like there's a way you can use all your experiences. Some of the things you think are negligible, like somebody's like, how do I bring in like my fellowship into it, or I like to play football, how do I bring it into it? Some of those things that you think are not important, but as long as it makes you who you are, which is why my first thing is usually consider and reflect about yourself. Like the things that make you who you are, there's the most times can feature in your personal statement, no matter how mundane they are to you. It's just about how you are able to tell the story. So that's like the very, very like, so yeah, there's more to you. So even if you, I don't know, like a lot of times people tend to write off their interest. Like you can even be a gamer, like, which is kind of weird. Like maybe people that like to play computer games. To be honest, it depends on what you're applying for. On a very good day, you can probably put it into your write-up. Because again, this is something I've done. So I used to work with secondary school students around the world to help them apply to get into Ivy League colleges. It was a very, very nice experience. I liked it. And it's very interesting, like, because again, this is kind of the process you go through. You get them to think about what they've done so far, and they tell you all the various things. And I like to read the different, and we have more, we go through like different versions of their SOP, but essentially the first start with like highlighting their lives. And at the end of the day, when we see the version of the SOP, we kind of like, okay, this is what you're going to submit. For me, I'm usually impressed by like the things that end up making their way into the SOP. Can be like, oh, I like taking care of horses. I volunteered for blah blah blah. Well, so for me, for people, it's usually there's more that can fit into your story than, so don't just box yourself talking about academics solely and talking about grades and all those type of things. They have to show, but there's more to you. So don't be shy. Again, as I think that's the first thing I said. Don't be shy to brag. Everybody that's applying is talking about the impressive things they're doing. So you're not going. You're like, how do you want to brag? Some people probably have done more outstanding things than yourself. So please brag about the things you've done in your own corner. They're not going to read your essay and be like, wow. Like, it's very rare that it's going to be like you're a very proud person, because everybody is going to be talking good about themselves. So you're not going to stand out and be like odd when you are talking about yourself as well. That is what you're supposed to do, and that's what everybody will be doing.
Thank you for that.
All right.
Yeah, I've talked a lot about SOPs.
Yeah, we've really done a great deal on that one. I'm also using this opportunity to tell our listeners that OG has a lot of teachings to give us. She has everything you could ever imagine when it comes to SOP. She can teach it out to you. Even once she's sleeping and she wakes up, it's very easy for her to, give us, vomit whatever she does regarding SOP. And we are gradually coming into a wrap. One more question before we draw the curtain on this episode. Coming from the audience perspective, OJ, so I'm soliciting on behalf of everyone. If you could grant us, I know you have a very busy schedule, right? But this is like, we're at this moment, we want to be more intentional, and it's also in a way of helping and impacting in your circle, in the world. So if we could have like a class, I don't want to call it a mentorship. Okay, let me put it that way, like a mentorship or a small circle class where we can just either select few of our members. So audience, if you are interested in this, you need to follow us on all our platforms. Like, that's the criteria. It depends on Ojedo if she agrees to this. So just like select a few of whom you can also, with your eyes, your lenses, view probably their SOPs 1 or 2 and give comments and feedback, and also in our channel too. That's like the last question. It's like a request.
Yeah, no, sure. I mean, I think that's it's something I should probably put together. But yeah, it's definitely like a plan for maybe September, because August is coming up. Or maybe September, to have like a workshop series, probably talk about like different aspects of application, but also look closely at SOPs. And if it's going to be a series of workshops, then it's going to be like you have to be like a consistent set of people that would kind of apply to and then be picked, and then have hands-on guidance, so you get like personal feedback on your SOP kind of thing, on your CVs and stuff like that. So it's something we are working on, and as goodness has said, if you follow us, you probably on social media, you get to hear more about the opportunity when it comes up. And also I hope to also reach out to other scholars who will be interested in lending their expertise or their experience on different aspects of application, and also providing feedback on SOPs. So just keep an eye. I think definitely something that would happen most likely in September.
All right, so now we call it a wrap on this podcast. Of course, to our listeners, we hope this episode has shown you a guide on the process. And if you have more questions about SOPs, motivation letter, personal statements, don't be scared. Yes, don't be scared. No, you can reach us on our all social media platforms, on Scholarship Chat, on YouTube, on X, and on Instagram. Drop your questions. OJ is there for you to answer. Drop as many as you want. We are giving you that to access her, because that's the only opportunity you can actually get, at least for now. In the meantime, before our workshop comes in. And it's up to you, Joanne.
Yeah, also remember, these essays are your opportunity to tell your story. So be authentic, avoid lying, be passionate, and show this scholarship committee why you deserve this opportunity. Like Goodness has said, you can reach out to us if you have any questions. I'm very sure OJ is willing and ready to answer your questions. Don't be scared, don't be shy. Nobody's an island. Yeah, so don't forget to subscribe to Scholar Chit Chat for more tips and insight into securing your dream scholarship. And also, we have over 30 episodes out, different scholarship. So now that you know how to write the essays, it will be easy for you to apply to the scholarship. So you can start listening to this episode to prepare you for when the scholarships will be open.
All right. So thank you so much, Oji, for being on the cool seat. Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
I think that's the end of this episode. We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. Like, we were also learning, despite that we were doing
Seriously.
So until next time, striving and stay inspired. And don't forget, the SOP essentially is for you to sell out yourself.